All right, friends and neighbors, welcome back to another networking video. As you know, if you've been following along, we have been working through a home network build. What we've got in our networks, the traffic that's there, why it's there, what devices we have, and then we decided to upgrade. So we had some good reasons to upgrade. So what equipment did we have? What do we want to swap out or swap in? And so I think today I can declare success. So I got to admit, I am kind of excited about today's video because it came out even better than I thought in terms of performance. So I'll get to that here in a second. So pretty jazzed. But first, before we start talking about the home network build, I've got a couple of shout outs to do. Brandon, Charlie, and Mitch, three fabulous young people who are just killing it out there in the world, teaching young minds, guiding people through, serving the country. So congrats and a shout out to Brandon, Charlie, and Mitch. I also hear like they're super fans, like they never miss a video. They're the first one to watch, can't get enough of networking. I may have heard that part wrong, but shout out to those three. Another shout out to Dave out at Ontario Telephone and Go NetSpeed for their fabulous tech support as I was working through this build. There we go. Now, on to the results. Well, let's remember where we were. Almost everything on the spectrum around us, right, was in the 2.4 gigahertz portion of the spectrum. And we sort of remember that, I mean, that's the default. That's what everybody uses. Nobody really thinks hard about it. And I think a lot of folks don't realize that there's this whole other spectrum out there. Now, there were some things that appeared on 5 gigahertz, and I had one device that was trying to do both. So when I looked at either the networks that are out there or the signals, as you see here, we've got, I mean, look at how many are on channel 1, look at how many are on channel 6 and on channel 11. And we talked about why everybody uses 1, 6, and 11. It's just for those high speed, the high speed capacity. Now, one of the problems with using 1, 6, and 11 is that you sort of top out. There are only 3 high-speed channels, and if you try to use wider channels, like a 40 megahertz channel, for example, you step all over the next high-speed channel. So, for example, if you camp on channel 1 and you try to go to a 40 megahertz channel, then nobody can use channel 6 either because you're sucked up all that bandwidth. So they have to go a little bit higher than that. And so it really messes things up at 2.4. So another good reason to go to 5 gigahertz is that there are more high-speed channels up there. Okay, so this is where we were, and this is where we are now. Now, if you take a look, there's still all that stuff down there in the 2.4 gigahertz portion of the spectrum. I mean, my printer is even trying to do a bonjour or an ad hoc network out there. It's not real easy to shut off. It's on there by default. But I tried to leave all that stuff behind and jump into the 5 gigahertz portion of the spectrum. So anywhere you see the Rouge Jules Verne, right, that's me. So I've got 3 of them out there now, and I chose channel 48, 149, and 161. Remember that in the 5 gigahertz portion, we're down there at 5.15, 5.25, and then we jump all the way up to 5.725. So there's a big gap. That's why there's the jump from 48 to 161 and 149. Now, there are some other networks that are out there, but as you can see, they're very, very low power. And when you're down around minus 80 dBm, minus 90 dBm, those signals are so weak that it's often difficult to even connect to those networks. As you can see, this one appears, but they're just kind of saying, don't bother. Now, again, this could be anything. This could be temporary networks, some device that somebody's got that's trying to operate. It might even be an access point that's in somebody's basement that's down the street a little bit. We're just getting that weak signal. But if you take a look at these enormous signals here, look at this thing. I was nearby this particular wireless home gateway or this access point, and these were the 2 on the other floors. So now if you go between the floors, you get an outstanding signal. And this is another representation of the signal. These peaks right here, these three, those are my three access points. And you can see that my signal is stepping all over any other signals that might be up there in the 5 gigahertz band. In addition, I'm not on those channels. I really tried to avoid what else was there. Now here you can see that there's the potential for overlap. If I try to use a really, really big channel, there is that potential for overlap right here because I'm on 149. Now 48 I chose because I've got this additional spectrum here, and 161 for the same reason. Now this is a fairly low signal strength, right? This is minus 80. This was even worse. So these actually are not going to cause me much trouble anyway. Now, another cool thing about the 5 gigahertz portion of the spectrum is that the propagation distance for frequencies at 5 gigahertz is actually quite short compared to 2.4. So even though you might be able to see the signals, they really sort of degrade after a couple hundred feet. So 5 gigahertz is really, really great for high-speed communication, but you can't be miles off. It has to be fairly close by to get those increased speeds. So again, these signals are not mine, and they're low enough that they're not going to cause me any trouble. So now, where are we in terms of speed? We moved to the correct portion of the spectrum. What did we get in terms of the performance? Remember where we were when we first did this, 80, 90 megabits per second. Very nice for most things, but I have internet connectivity from our wired devices at half a gig, and I was kind of hoping to try and get up to that level. And so, what did our speed test show with our new improved network topology? There it is. Take a look at that. Wireless connectivity at close to 500 megabits per second up and down. But hey, this is just a screenshot. Let's do it live right now. Well, would you take a look at that? 400 down and 367 up. Now, that is a little bit lower than this one right here, but in this particular case, I was very, very close to the access point or the home gateway. And this time when I run the test, it's on the other side of the basement from me. So it's a little bit of distance. And so this also underscores what happens to 5 gigahertz. It's not a great distance, but it's enough to change the speed. So if you've got things like TVs or something like that, it is a good idea to put them close by. But boy, oh boy, am I happy with the performance of this particular network. What is that? 4 or 5 times what I had before. Now you always get some, when you're trying to improve things in the network and you do a good job of it, you're always going to get some kind of improvement. But this kind of improvement, I wasn't expecting that, but I'm very, very happy. It's just pretty friggin' awesome if I wanna be honest. All right, so what were the major fixes? As you know, I cleaned up the network. So I had, a couple of these old Belkins in there. They had low wired port speeds. They had internal antennas, right? And who knows what their capability actually was and what standards they supported. So there you have it. I wanted to really try to make use of the 802.11 AC standards, or at least the 5 gigahertz. And so these might have been really holding me back. Even if they did 802.11a, they might have been a limitation. Remember that I also popped one of these in there, right? This is the Netgear, whoop, there we go, Netgear 5-port switch. So this is unmanaged. Everything in my network goes back to a managed switch, but this is unmanaged. It's just a dumb but very, very fast switch. And then lastly, of course, the device that I have in here, I have 3 of these guys here. So this is the Linksys 1750. So an older Linksys access point, but again, I didn't want to spend $1 million doing that. Now I've got an edge gateway, and all of these other access points, or all of these wireless home gateways, I turned off the DHCP servers and I only used the switch ports. So they weren't doing network address translation, they weren't doing routing, they're acting as really an access point with some integrated switch ports. Remember that in addition to moving the 5 gigahertz, I also chose the channels that I wanted based on what I saw. I didn't want any automatic configuration. Now, some things to watch out for. If you take a look here in the upper right as you're looking at it, right above my head here, whatever your clients is doing, that you have to sort of know that, because if you don't take a look, you could have a wireless client that is set to a mode that is a legacy mode, or is blocking what your access points are trying to do, or what your wireless home gateway is doing. So at the very least, you want to be in a mixed mode sort of operation, and you want to make sure that you're not forcing it to an older or slower speed standard. Let them do what they need to do. Now, in addition, this setting right here allowed me to see or change what I could see on my scanner. So be aware that when you're scanning, depending on the tool that you're using and depending on the software that you're using, you may not always see what's around you. So make sure you do a little experimentation to verify that you can see everything that's around you. It took me a couple of tries to see all of those signals. Plus, you got to move around a little bit, and don't forget to stay in one spot for a little while, as the dwell time on each channel is going to take some time to get through and scan everything. And lastly, if you take a look down here at the bottom, when I was setting up the wireless home gateways, I wanted to make sure that I had mixed Wi-Fi mode. If I had somebody that couldn't quite do the big channels, the 40 megahertz channels, I wanted to be able to still use 802.11ac. And then I picked the channels, right? And then I picked a channel width. On some of them, it was 40 megahertz, which means that you're really going to get up to 40 megahertz. And some of them just said that exactly, up to 40 megahertz wide, which means that your access points or your wireless home gateway is going to try and negotiate up to the fastest speed possible. Now, my performance numbers indicate that my access points were negotiating and getting up to those higher bandwidth, larger channels. So I was very, very happy with that. So the final topology here looks like this. I have a managed switch, and all of my access points or wireless home gateways come into this managed switch. And then there's my little Netgear switch off to the side. Now, this is an important detail here, I suppose, too. My ISP's router, they were also running wireless. Now, they told me that I could pull it out of the network, but I decided to put another wireless home gateway in between here. I will talk about that next time. There's a really good reason for this. But that means that right here, this device is running network address translation, but no wireless. And this device right here is also running network address translation. So I have a NAT box behind a NAT box, which is totally legal. It sometimes is a performance hit, but I did this for a very particular reason that I'll talk more about next time. So there we have it. There's our final topology. Of course, we've got, printers in here and nodes and TVs and stuff like that. But there you go. That's the network backbone. Well, that took us a little bit to get through, but I am going to claim victory on this one. Very happy with how it came out. Very happy with the cleaned up spectrum and the performance numbers. When you're doing this, remember to scan, do those speed tests to make sure that you're getting the benefit of some changes that you're making, and check for easy fixes in your network. You never know when you're going to have some box in there, bad connections, old cables, things like that, dust, dirt, heat, moisture, all of those things can be problems. And remember that you do not have to spend $1 million to do this. All told, I was in here for about $75 in equipment. So I did it on the cheap, but man, look at the performance that I got out of there. And remember that my ISP's connection is 500 meg. No matter what I do internally, that's as good as it's going to get. So it doesn't matter if I build a 10 gigabit backbone in my basement. That is not going to do me any good going out to the world. So next time we'll talk about how fast is fast, what are those fat channels, maybe do some performance numbers, some iPerf stuff. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe if you are as excited as I am about your home network builds. Now get out there and do it. Remember, this is networking. You can do this. And no matter how fast your network is going now, no matter how fast you get it to go, may those packets always reach their destinations.